What happens when a cocky billionaire from Lagos, known for breaking hearts, meets a mysterious village girl with secrets of her own? He thought he was in control, but she was always 10 steps ahead. In this tale of power, betrayal, and redemption, nothing is as it seems. Who really wins the game of love and ambition? Lagos shimmered under the evening lights, its skyline a testament to ambition and wealth. At the center of it all stood Tamini Bakare, a name whispered with envy and admiration in every corner of high society. At 32, Tamini wasn't just a billionaire, he was a phenomenon. His fleet of exotic cars, designer suits, and sprawling mansion overlooking the city skyline were symbols of his meteoric rise from modest beginnings. But beneath the charm and sophistication, Tamini was infamous for another reason: his conquests. Women were pawns in his game, dazzled by his wealth and charisma before he inevitably moved on. He had a motto that defined his relationships: city girls can never be trusted. When it's time to marry, I'll find a quiet, respectful village girl who will worship the ground I walk on. On this particular evening, Tamini reclined on his leather couch, a glass of whiskey in hand. His best friend, Kunle, laughed as he scrolled through Tamini's latest flings on social media. "Tamini, the women's man. What happened? No girl by your side tonight?" Kunle teased. Tamini smirked. "These city girls are all the same, too smart for their own good. When I'm ready for a wife, I'll find someone simple, humble, a village girl who knows how to respect a man." Kunle raised an eyebrow. "Village girl? My guy, you'd be surprised. There's no such thing as simple anymore. Be careful what you wish for." Tamini laughed off Kunle's warning, but deep down, a plan was already forming in his mind. The time had come to find the perfect woman, and he knew exactly where to look. The sleek black SUV glided along the dusty winding roads leading to Emor, a village perched among lush green hills. The setting sun cast a golden hue over the serene countryside, a sharp contrast to the bustling chaos of Lagos. Inside the luxury vehicle, Tamini Bakare leaned back, his polished designer sunglasses reflecting the simplicity of the landscape. It had been years since he last set foot here, and he wasn't coming back quietly. The moment his SUV rolled into the village square, it was as though time itself paused. The villagers erupted in excitement, their whispers spreading like wildfire. Women peeked from behind bamboo huts, their eyes sparkling with admiration as they took in his sharp tailored suit. Children, their faces filled with wonder, ran barefoot alongside the vehicle, shouting his name like a chant. "Tamini has returned," one woman exclaimed, clutching her shawl. "The boy who left with nothing and came back a billionaire." As the SUV came to a halt, Tamini stepped out, adjusting his suit jacket with a practiced flourish. His confident stride and dazzling smile left an undeniable impression. The village watched in awe as he surveyed his surroundings like a king returning to his realm. From the crowd, an older woman broke through, her face lighting up with joy. It was Mama Bakare, her arms outstretched as tears brimmed in her eyes. "My son," she called, her voice trembling. "Look at you. You've done so well for yourself." She pulled him into a tight embrace. Tamini smirked, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve. "Mama, the city has been good to me, but I haven't forgotten where I came from." Mama Bakare's smile softened, her gaze searching his face. "You may have left the village, Tamini, but don't forget your roots. Humility goes further than wealth." Tamini chuckled lightly, waving her words away. "Mama, don't worry. I know why I'm here. It's time I find a wife, one who respects me, knows her place, and isn't blinded by city life. A humble, simple village girl is what I need." Mama's smile faltered, concern flickering in her eyes. "Marriage, my son, is about more than respect. It's about love, patience, and a partnership. Don't let pride guide your choices." Tamini's confidence didn't waver. I know exactly what I'm doing, Mama. Trust me. By morning, word of Tamini's mission spread through the village like wildfire. They whispered, the Lagos billionaire is looking for a wife. Women dusted off their finest wrappers and adorned themselves with colorful beads. The marketplace buzzed with energy as hopeful young women lined the streets, their eyes gleaming with ambition. But Tamini was unimpressed. The giggles, the stolen glances, they felt shallow. That was until he saw her. At the edge of the bustling market, Moriki stood beneath the shade of a tree, arranging baskets of woven mats. There was something about her, the fluidity of her movements, the quiet strength in her posture, that captured his attention. She wasn't like the others, who eagerly sought his gaze. No, Moriki moved with purpose, her focus entirely on her work. Who is that? Tamini asked a nearby villager, his voice tinged with curiosity. That's Moriki, the man replied. She's different, independent, hard-working, and as sharp as they come. Tamini's eyes gleamed. Perfect. Tamini leaned casually against his SUV, observing her from a distance. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her air of confidence that intrigued him. He wasn't used to women who seemed so unaffected by wealth and power. Finally, he approached, flashing the smile that had melted hearts across Lagos. Good afternoon, he said smoothly. Moriki glanced up briefly, her expression polite but indifferent. Good afternoon, she replied before turning back to her baskets. Tamini blinked, momentarily thrown by her lack of interest. I'm Tamini Bakare, he said, leaning slightly closer. Perhaps you've heard of me. This time, Moreniki's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. I've heard the stories. Tamini straightened, his pride swelling. Then you know I'm someone worth talking to. Moriki met his gaze, her eyes sharp. And what exactly do you want, Mr. Bakare? Her directness caught him off guard. To get to know you, he said, recovering quickly. I can see you're different, smart, elegant. I'd like to spend time with you. Moriki arched an eyebrow. Spend time doing what? Tamini chuckled, adjusting his watch. You'll see. Maybe I can take you to the city, show you things you've never seen before. Her smile widened, but it was laced with amusement. I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy here. Besides, I don't need a man to show me the world. Tamini stared at her, stunned by her boldness. Most women would have jumped at the chance, but Moriki remained grounded. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of rejection, and it only made him want her more. Over the following days, Tamini became a fixture in the village, using every trick in the book to win her over. He arrived in flashy cars, delivered extravagant gifts, and even helped her family with expenses. Yet, Moriki remained gracious but distant, never giving him the satisfaction of yielding to his advances. To her friend Ada, Moriki confided, Let him think I'm the simple village girl he's looking for. He has no idea what he's up against. Ada's eyes widened. Are you sure about this, Moriki? Men like him don't take rejection lightly. Moreniki's eyes glinted with determination. He won't hurt me. If anything, I'll be the one teaching him a lesson. Tamini, meanwhile, believed he was winning her over. What he didn't realize was that Moriki wasn't playing his game. She was creating her own. Tamini was a man used to getting what he wanted, and Moriki had become his obsession. Every morning, he found new ways to impress her, arriving in flashy cars, delivering more gifts, and even helping her family with expenses. Yet, Moriki remained elusive. She smiled politely, thanked him, but never gave him the satisfaction of fawning over his wealth. Instead, she asked him questions that left him unsettled. So, Mr. Bakare, she said one afternoon, sitting beneath the shade of a mango tree, what do you want in life? beyond money and admiration. Tamini laughed. What more is there? Money buys everything. Respect, comfort, and love. Moriki shook her head. Love can't be bought. It has to be earned. Her words lingered in Tamini's mind long after their conversation ended. For the first time, he began to doubt himself. Was there more to life than his possessions and conquests? Determined to seal the deal, Tamini turned to his mother for advice. Mama, I found her, the perfect wife. Moriki is everything I've been looking for. Mama Bakare frowned. Are you sure? Have you truly gotten to know her heart? A good wife isn't just humble, my son. She must also be strong and wise. Don't let your pride blind you. Tamini brushed off her concerns. Mama, she's the one. I feel it. That evening, he found Moriki by the riverbank, her silhouette glowing in the fading light. Moriki, he said, taking her hand, I want you to be my wife. Move to Lagos with me, and I'll give you the world. Moreniki's heart pounded. She had anticipated this moment, yet hearing the words stirred unexpected emotions. I need time to think, she replied softly. Tamini nodded, confident her hesitation was just an act. But as Moriki walked home, she felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. This is it, she told Ada later that night. If I say yes, everything changes. But I need to be sure I can handle him. Ada squeezed her hand. Whatever you decide, be careful. Men like Tamini don't take rejection lightly. Little did Ada know, rejection was the last thing on Moreniki's mind. She wasn't planning to walk away. She was planning to win, and on her own terms. The village was abuzz with excitement when Moriki finally accepted Tamini's proposal. Drums echoed through the hills as neighbors gathered to celebrate the engagement of the village beauty and the Lagos billionaire. Tamini beamed with pride, parading Moriki like a trophy. To him, he had found the perfect woman, humble, respectful, and untouched by the greed and ambitions of city girls. What he didn't realize was that he had walked straight into her carefully laid trap. Moriki played her role flawlessly. She smiled demurely, accepted compliments, and deferred to Tamini's every suggestion. But behind her soft eyes was a mind already plotting the next moves. At the engagement party, Tamini's friend Kunle pulled him aside. Tamini, she's beautiful, no doubt, but are you sure she's as simple as she seems? Something about her doesn't sit right with me. Tamini laughed, brushing Kunle's words away. You're worrying over nothing. Moriki is perfect, you'll see. But even as he celebrated, Moriki observed everything. His friends, his insecurities, and most importantly, his trust. She had already started studying his business moves, listening intently whenever he talked about investments or contracts. That night, Moriki sat in her small room, staring at the engagement ring that sparkled in the moonlight. Are you sure you can handle him? Ada whispered, leaning against the doorframe. Moreniki's lips curled into a smile. Oh, I can handle him. He thinks I'm a village girl with no ambition. Let him believe it. By the time I'm done, he'll never see it coming. Meanwhile, Tamini was already planning their wedding, an elaborate Lagos affair with all the glitz and glamour befitting a billionaire. He felt powerful, in control, and ready to shape Moriki into the wife he had always imagined. But Moriki was one step ahead. As the days passed, she began weaving herself deeper into his life, slowly gaining access to his accounts, understanding his partnerships, and positioning herself as his trusted confidant. By the time Tamini realized he had given her too much control, it would already be too late. Tamini spared no expense for the wedding. It was the talk of Lagos, a celebration of wealth and status. Celebrities, business moguls, and politicians filled the grand hall, adorned with gold accents and crystal chandeliers. Cameras flashed as Tamini and Moreniki exchanged vows under a cascade of white roses. Moreniki played her part perfectly. She appeared shy yet radiant, the picture of a humble village bride stepping into the glamorous world of her billionaire husband. Guests whispered praises about her beauty and poise, but a few, including Kunle, remained unconvinced. During the reception, Kunle pulled Tamini aside. "Tamini, I need to talk to you," Kunle said urgently. "Not now, Kunle," Tamini replied, brushing him off. "No, you need to listen," Kunle insisted. "I did some digging. Moreniki isn't as simple as she seems. Her business in the village was bigger than you think. She's not just a girl who sews dresses. She's a planner, a strategist. I'm telling you, be careful." Tamini laughed, sipping champagne. "You're overthinking things. She's my wife now. Everything is fine." But Kunle's words lingered in Tamini's mind as the night wore on. Later, as he watched Moreniki dance gracefully among the guests, he dismissed his doubts. She was his now, and he was in control, or so he thought. After the wedding, Tamini brought Moreniki to his Lagos mansion, expecting her to be overwhelmed by the luxury. At first, she played the part perfectly, clinging to his arm, looking to him for guidance, and marveling at the opulence. But little by little, Moreniki's demeanor began to change. She started asking questions about his business, innocent at first, then more pointed. She wanted to know how his companies operated, who his partners were, and where he invested his money. Tamini, blinded by trust and pride, saw no harm in sharing the details. "You're my wife now," he said one evening, handing her access to one of his smaller accounts. "I want you to feel secure." Moreniki smiled sweetly. "Thank you, my love. I only want to understand how everything works. After all, we're building a future together." What Tamini didn't know was that Moreniki had already begun reaching out to his partners, introducing herself as his trusted advisor. She studied contracts, identified loopholes, and laid the groundwork for her next move. Mama Bakare visited them a few weeks later, her eyes sharp as she observed Moreniki's growing confidence. "Tamini," she said privately, "are you sure about this girl? I've been hearing things. People say she's not as innocent as she seems." "Mama, please," Tamini scoffed. "You worry too much. Moreniki is perfect. She respects me. She's nothing like those city girls." Mama Bakare sighed, but said no more. She had raised Tamini to be strong, but she also knew pride could blind a man. Weeks turned into months, and Moreniki's influence over Tamini's life deepened. She no longer played the timid village girl. Instead, she exuded quiet confidence, her once soft-spoken tone now commanding attention during business meetings she attended by Tamini's side. Tamini didn't notice the shift. He was too busy basking in the admiration of others who praised him for finding such a perfect wife. "Morenike is different," he often boasted to Kunle. "She's smart, respectful, and humble. I told you, a village girl is the way to go." Kunle, however, remained wary. One afternoon, Kunle visited Tamini's mansion and found Morenike in the study, going through financial statements. "Mrs. Bakare," Kunle greeted cautiously. Morenike looked up, her smile polite but firm. "Kunle, is there something you need?" Kunle frowned. "I was looking for Tamini. He's out, but I can assist if it's important." Kunle's eyes narrowed. "You're very involved in his business these days." Morenike leaned back, her expression calm. "I'm his wife. What affects him affects me. Isn't that what a partnership is about?" Kunle left unsettled, but Morenike barely noticed. She was focused on her plans that were starting to bear fruit. Morenike's late-night study sessions and sudden knowledge about Tamini's investments weren't random. She had memorized every contract, every deal, and every loophole. Her friend Ada had warned her to be careful. "Moreniki, you're walking a fine line," Ada said during a phone call. "What if he finds out?" "He won't," Moreniki replied. "Not until it's too late." Despite Ada's concerns, Moreniki pressed forward, gaining access to Tamini's bank accounts and legal documents. She kept detailed records of his assets, preparing for the moment when she would make her move. Tamini, meanwhile, remained oblivious. He continued to trust Morenike, mistaking her curiosity and intelligence for devotion. He even allowed her to oversee small deals, not realizing she was using the experience to build her own network. One night, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the Lagos Skyline, Moreniki asked, "Do you ever worry about losing it all?" Tamini laughed. "Impossible. I've worked too hard to get here. No one can take it away from me." Morenike smiled faintly. "You're lucky then." But as Tamini fell asleep that night, Morenike remained awake, staring out at the city lights. She knew his luck was about to run out. It began subtly, too subtle for Tamini to notice. Small transactions from his business accounts started disappearing, masked as routine expenses. Contracts were altered, shifting ownership rights of properties and investments. Tamini, confident in his wife's devotion, never suspected a thing. Moreniki played her role with precision. She continued to shower him with affection, ensuring he never had a reason to question her actions. One evening, as they dined on the rooftop terrace, Moreniki brought up his business ventures. "You know," she began, slicing into her steak, "I was thinking about that new real estate deal you mentioned. The one near Victoria Island. It's risky, isn't it?" Tamini waved her off. "Not at all. I've got it covered." "But what if something unexpected happens?" she pressed. "What if someone takes advantage of you?" Tamini chuckled, taking a sip of wine. "No one can take advantage of me, Morenike. I'm always in control." Morenike smiled sweetly, though her mind was already racing. "Not for long, Tamini. Not for long." It happened 2 weeks later. One of Tamini's largest contracts fell through, costing him millions. Confused and angry, he called his lawyer, only to be told that the deal had been reassigned. "To whom?" Tamini demanded. "To your wife, Morenike Bakare," the lawyer replied. Tamini froze. "That's impossible." "I'm afraid it's not. She signed the transfer papers with your authorization. It's legal, Tamini." Shocked, Tamini confronted Moreniki. "What have you done?" he roared, slamming the papers on the table. Moreniki didn't flinch. "I did what I had to do. This isn't just your life, Tamini. It's ours, and I'm making sure we're protected." "Protected?" Tamini shouted. "You stole from me." Moreniki's voice remained calm. "No, I secured our future. You handed me the keys, Tamini. Did you think I'd sit back and let you control everything?" For the first time, Tamini felt fear, not for his wealth, but for the power he had given away so carelessly. He stormed out of the house, driving aimlessly through the streets of Lagos, replaying every moment he had ignored the warnings. Meanwhile, Moreniki moved with the precision of a chess master, solidifying her grip on the remaining pieces of Tamini's crumbling empire. Every move was deliberate, every action carefully calculated. She wasn't just dismantling his world, she was rewriting her own future. Tamini, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, was about to face the ultimate betrayal. But here's the question, my dear viewers. What do you think happens next? Will Moreniki deliver the final blow and bring Tamini to his knees? Or will he uncover her master plan in time to fight back? To uncover the shocking twists and turns, head over to part 2 on our channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the next chapter of this gripping saga. Turn on your notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. Tamini awoke to the sharp vibration of his phone, its incessant buzz shattering the early morning silence. Groggily, he grabbed it, only to see a stream of missed calls and frantic messages from investors, lawyers, and business partners. His pulse quickened as the subject lines jumped out at him. Urgent, project collapse, account suspended, repossession notice. The air around him seemed to thicken. "This has to be a mistake," he muttered, throwing on a shirt and rushing out the door. By the time he arrived at his office, chaos awaited. His assistant, usually calm and collected, looked pale and jittery. She held a stack of papers with trembling hands. "Sir, it's bad," she stammered. "Really bad." "Just tell me," Tamini barked, his frustration spilling over. "Morenik," she said, barely above a whisper. "She's assumed ownership of everything. The accounts, the properties, all of it. She filed the transfer documents. They're legal, sir." The words hit him like a physical blow. His knees buckled, and he braced himself against the edge of the desk. "No, this can't be happening," he rasped, his voice hollow. But it was. The assistant handed him the stack of legal documents, each one bearing his signature, each one a piece of his empire he had unknowingly handed over. Tamini's mind raced. How? How could she have done this? Desperation clawed at him as he sped home, his thoughts a jumbled mess of disbelief and fury. The mansion that had always been a symbol of his power now felt cold and lifeless. The staff scattered at the sight of him, their heads lowered, their movements hurried. He stormed up the grand staircase, the weight of betrayal pressing on his chest. Entering the master bedroom, he froze. There she was, Moriki. She sat by the window, bathed in the soft morning light, her posture calm and poised. Her face betrayed no emotion as she turned to face him. "You destroyed me," Tamini spat, his voice shaking with anger. "You took everything." Moriki stood slowly, her gaze steady. "No, Tamini," she said coolly. "I didn't destroy you. I taught you a lesson." "A lesson?" His voice rose, laced with bitterness. "You call this a lesson? You ruined my life." Moriki stepped closer, her expression unflinching. "No, Tamini," she repeated, her tone firmer. "You ruined your own life. Your arrogance, your greed, and the way you treated people, especially women, made this inevitable. I didn't take anything from you that you didn't hand me on a silver platter. You trusted me because you underestimated me, just like you underestimated everyone else." Her words sliced through him, leaving him raw and exposed. For the first time, Tamini found himself truly speechless. The weight of her truth crashed down on him like a tidal wave. Moreniki's voice softened, but her gaze remained steely. "Maybe next time you'll learn to value people instead of using them." Defeated and hollow, Tamini packed his bags the next day. The drive back to Imor felt like a march of shame. As the SUV rolled into the village, the once adoring whispers of the villagers were replaced with murmurs of pity. "He's lost everything," they said, shaking their heads. Mama Bakare greeted him at the door, her face a mix of sorrow and resolve. She pulled him into a tight embrace, but her words were sharp and clear. "I warned you, my son. Pride goes before a fall, and you fell hard." Tamini had no argument. His shoulders slumped as he wandered the fields aimlessly over the following days, haunted by the ghost of his former life. The mansion, the cars, the power, it all seemed like a distant dream, overshadowed by the woman who had bested him at his own game. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Moriki was thriving. The assets she had seized from Tamini became the foundation of her growing empire. She expanded her fashion business, not just nationally, but internationally, becoming a name synonymous with innovation and power. Her face graced magazine covers, and her designs walked the most prestigious runways. She was no longer the underestimated village girl. Moreniki Bakare had transformed into a force that demanded respect, and she had done it on her own terms. Standing on the pinnacle of her success, Moreniki Bakare was now a household name. Her designs adorned magazine covers, her brand became synonymous with elegance, and her empire expanded beyond the borders of Lagos. Yet, as she stared out of her office window, overlooking the bustling city, her thoughts strayed to the man she had left behind. Tamini Bakare, the man who had underestimated her, trusted her, and ultimately handed her the tools to dismantle his empire. She had achieved her goal, proving that power could be reclaimed and respect demanded. But a question nagged at her. Was this truly the end for Tamini, or was it the beginning of something greater? In Emor, Tamini sat on a weathered wooden bench outside his mother's humble home. The dusty road stretched endlessly before him, and with it the remnants of the life he had once known. The villagers' whispers followed him everywhere, a reminder of how far he had fallen. The once proud billionaire, adorned with suits and surrounded by luxury, was now a man stripped bare. Yet, in the stillness of Emor's hills, Tamini began to see his arrogance for what it truly was: hollow bravado. He replayed the broken relationships, the women he had treated as conquests, and the trust he had abused. Each memory was a shard of glass cutting deeper into his pride. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, his mother joined him on the veranda. "My son," Mama Bakare said softly, her voice carrying the weight of wisdom, "you've spent enough time mourning. It's time to rebuild." Tamini sighed, his head bowed. "Start over with what, Mama? I have nothing." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have your mind, your hands, and your lessons. Wealth can be rebuilt, but this time let it be with humility and respect." Her words were a spark in the darkness. That night, Tamini stayed awake, sketching ideas for small businesses and reconnecting with old contacts. He still had the sharp instincts that once built an empire. He only needed to wield them differently. 3 months later, Amor buzzed with excitement as Moreniki returned for her sister's wedding. She hadn't planned to see Tamini but found herself drawn to the familiar market square, and there he was, standing by a stall, sleeves rolled up, helping a trader arrange baskets. He was leaner, his movements unhurried, his face lined with humility. "Tamini," she called, her voice cutting through the chatter. He turned, and for a moment their eyes locked. The man who had once radiated arrogance now stood before her, grounded and unguarded. "Moreniki," he said, his voice steady but softer than she remembered. The villagers watched in curiosity as Moreniki gestured for them to talk privately under the shade of a large tree. Seated on the grass, Moreniki studied him carefully. "You seem different." Tamini nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I had to be. Losing everything showed me who I really was. Now, I'm rebuilding one step at a time." She tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "And what have you learned?" "To treat people with respect, to value those who stand by me, not those who flatter me." Her expression softened, though she masked it with a faint smile. "Good. Maybe you weren't hopeless after all." Tamini leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Morenike, I know what you did was to teach me a lesson, and I deserved it. But I also know that what we shared wasn't all lies. I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything." Her walls went up instinctively. "Apologies don't erase the past, Tamini." "No," he said, his voice quiet yet firm. "But they can build a better future." For the first time since their marriage, Moreniki felt her resolve falter. She hadn't expected this version of Tamini, a man who had not only accepted his downfall but had grown from it. Moreniki crossed her arms, her sharp eyes assessing him. "You say you've changed. But how do I know this isn't another performance? Tamini met her gaze. You don't. That's why I'm not asking for anything from you. Not your forgiveness, not your trust. I just want to prove myself, whether you're watching or not. His sincerity disarmed her. The man before her was stripped of pretense, leaving only raw honesty. Yet her instincts told her to be cautious. I'll believe it when I see it, she said finally. Tamini returned to the village with renewed determination. He began helping local traders, offering advice and connecting them with suppliers in Lagos. Slowly, he earned the respect of the villagers, not as the wealthy outsider, but as a hard-working man rebuilding his life. Moriki, back in Lagos, found herself checking on his progress more often than she cared to admit. At first, it was curiosity. Then, it became something more. The man who had once flaunted his wealth now devoted his days to empowering others. Ada, noticing her friend's frequent mentions of Tamini, smirked knowingly. You're watching him too closely, Ada teased. Moriki shrugged. I'm just making sure he doesn't fool anyone again. Ada laughed. Or maybe you're hoping he doesn't. Slowly, he earned the respect of the villagers, not as the wealthy outsider, but as a hard-working man rebuilding his life. Moriki, back in Lagos, found herself checking on his progress more often than she cared to admit. At first, it was curiosity. Then, it became something more. The man who had once flaunted his wealth now devoted his days to empowering others. Ada, noticing her friend's frequent mentions of Tamini, smirked knowingly. You're watching him too closely, Ada teased. Moriki shrugged. I'm just making sure he doesn't fool anyone again. Ada laughed. Or maybe you're hoping he doesn't. And if I succeed, then we'll talk. Tamini extended his hand. Deal. The weeks that followed tested them both, forcing Tamini to dig deep into the skills he had once taken for granted. Late nights turned into quiet conversations, and the walls between them began to crack. Tamini saw the drive that had made Moriki unstoppable, while she glimpsed the man he could become. But trust was fragile, and the shadow of their past lingered, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Weeks turned into months as Tamini worked tirelessly under Moriniki's guidance. The project she assigned him, a clothing line aimed at empowering artisans from rural communities, was more than just a test. It was a reflection of his transformation. Tamini threw himself into the work with unwavering determination, not for wealth or pride, but to prove to himself and to Moreniki that he was capable of true growth. His designs blended modern aesthetics with traditional African influences, and the clothing line began to gain traction. Your work is good, Moreniki admitted one evening as they reviewed the final collection. Better than I expected. Tamini smiled faintly. You expected me to fail, didn't you? She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. I expected you to show me who you really are, and you did. Their partnership grew stronger as they launched the line together. The collection's success exceeded expectations, receiving praise from critics and buyers alike. Moreniki watched as Tamini humbly accepted accolades, no longer seeking validation, but focusing on the artisans whose lives the project had transformed. For the first time, she saw a man who understood the value of legacy, not just in wealth, but in impact. But the ghosts of their past still lingered. Crystal, Folklore, and the doubts of their critics continued to cast shadows over their newfound partnership. One day, an anonymous exposé surfaced, dredging up details of Tamini's former exploits and hinting at Moreniki's calculated rise to power. The media frenzy threatened to undo their progress. We should ignore it, Tamini suggested, his tone calm yet firm. Moreniki shook her head. Number, if we ignore it, we let others define our story. Together, they held a press conference. Standing side by side, they addressed every accusation with honesty and vulnerability. I was once a man driven by arrogance and greed, Tamini confessed to the reporters. I hurt people and I paid the price, but that fall was my salvation. It taught me to rebuild, not with pride, but with purpose. Moriki followed, her voice steady and strong. I am not ashamed of my journey. Yes, I fought for what I have, and yes, I made bold decisions, but I've always done so with integrity. Together, we've built something not just for ourselves, but for those who believed in us. Their authenticity resonated. Public opinion began to shift, and their critics grew silent. Months later, as they stood on the balcony of their newly rebuilt home overlooking the Lagos Skyline, Tamini turned to Moriki. I've learned one thing, he said softly. And what's that? She asked, tilting her head. That redemption isn't a destination, it's a journey, and I want to spend the rest of mine walking it with you. Moriki smiled, her eyes shining with quiet pride. You've come a long way, Tamini Bakare. But the journey doesn't end here. It doesn't, he agreed, taking her hand. But as long as we walk it together, I think we'll be fine. The years that followed saw the duo rise as one of Lagos's most admired power couples. Moreniki's fashion empire expanded globally, creating opportunities for young designers across Africa. Tamini's consultancy flourished, and his mentorship programs became a beacon of hope for struggling entrepreneurs. Their partnership wasn't without challenges, but they faced each one with a unity forged through fire. They built a family rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect, with Mama Bakare's wisdom guiding them through. Their story became a testament to the power of transformation, the importance of humility, and the strength of a love born not from perfection, but from perseverance. On a quiet evening in Imor, Tamini and Moriki sat under the same tree where they had first reconnected. The village buzzed with life around them, and their laughter mingled with the warm breeze. Tamini glanced at her, his heart full. You know, Moriki, I used to think life was about winning, but you showed me it's about becoming. She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. And you showed me that even the proudest man can change if he's willing to try. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, they sat together, two souls who had fought, fallen, and risen again. Together, they had rewritten their destinies. Thank you for watching and joining us on this incredible journey. Be sure to explore more of our stories on the channel or click on the next video YouTube recommends. If this story touched your heart, please like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more captivating African tales. Don't forget to tap the notification bell to stay connected to the wisdom and beauty of these stories. Until next time, stay blessed and keep shining.